We're going in a different direction." Like a poisonous vapor, the words lingered in the air of the meeting room. I was seated across from Caleb Vance, Nexera Therapeutics' recently hired CEO. He was over 20 years my junior and had only been with the firm for 6 months. "Different direction," I said again, sounding more composed than I have in 15 years. With his fancy tie fixed, Caleb avoided looking directly at me. "The board believes that new leadership is needed in the research division. Someone who uses creative methods." It nearly made me chuckle. Innovative approaches? I created Neurovance, the game-changing medication that transformed Nexera from a faltering mid-size pharmaceutical business to a biotech giant with yearly sales of over $2 billion. The substance that transformed the company's fortunes and the lives of countless people was invented by my team. "I understand," I responded, astonished by my composure. "What does the transition look like?" A slim folder was slid across the polished table by Caleb. "Your package for severance. Everything has been laid out by the legal staff." It's commonplace. My gut tightened as I opened it and looked at the numbers. Typical. They were promising me a 12-week salary and 3 months of continuous health benefits after 15 years and billions of dollars in revenue generating. It was offensive. However, I kept it to myself. I responded, "I see," and shut the folder. "When would you like me to finish?" "Today would be best." He was polite enough to appear a little uneasy. "Human resources can help you pack your office for security reasons." For concerns of security. As if, after 15 years of devoted devotion, I would suddenly turn dangerous and spiteful. However, I just nodded and got to my feet. "It won't be required. I am able to tidy my workplace by myself." When I got to the door, he remarked, "Claudia, this isn't personal. Just business." I grinned as I turned around. "Obviously. Business. You can call me Claudia Benson." I was the Senior Director of Pharmaceutical Research at Nexera Therapeutics in Stamford, Connecticut, till now. I am 51 years old. I gave my all to this business. I declined offers from rivals, worked on the weekends and on holidays, and skipped family gatherings because I thought we were doing something right. Coworkers eyed me with worried looks as I made my way back to my office. News spread quickly. Even though my thoughts was racing, I maintained a neutral expression and a raised head. 15 years of creativity, of innovations, of allegiance. A 5-minute meeting came to an end. I had planned for this scenario months in advance, which is what Caleb Vance was unaware of and what the board had neglected to verify. Because you learn to expect side effects when you work in the pharmaceutical sector as long as I have. It wasn't always like this at Nexera. When I joined the company in 2008, we were a scrappy team of scientists and researchers passionate about neurological treatments. Howard Jameson, the founder and original CEO, created a culture where science came first and business second. "Solve the problems and the profits will follow," he used to say. And he was right. Under his leadership, we developed several moderately successful medications, but nothing revolutionary. Until Neurovance. I still remember the night I first saw the promising data. It was nearly midnight, and I was alone in the lab, reviewing test results from our latest trials. The compound showed unprecedented effectiveness in treating treatment-resistant depression with minimal side effects. I called Howard at home, something I'd never done before. This could change everything, I told him. It did. Neurovance received fast-track approval from the FDA, and within 2 years, it became one of the most prescribed antidepressants in the country. Nexera's stock soared, and suddenly, we weren't the underdogs anymore. We were players. Howard retired 3 years ago, and that's when things began to shift. The board brought in finance people, marketing executives, corporate types who talked about leveraging synergies and maximizing shareholder value. The research team still had respect, but increasingly, decisions were made with quarterly earnings in mind rather than scientific advancement. Then came Caleb Vance, headhunted from a larger pharmaceutical company, brought in to take Nexera to the next level. I tried to work with him. I really did. I presented our latest breakthrough, an extended release version of Neurovance with even fewer side effects and longer efficacy. Neurovance XR, we called it. Impressive, Caleb had said. But I could see in his eyes that he wasn't fully grasping the scientific significance. How quickly can we get this to market? We need to complete the final trial phases, and then there's the patent process, I explained. Patents? He frowned. Those take too long. Can we expedite? Our legal team has been deliberate, I said carefully. They've been sitting on my paperwork for months. That conversation should have been my warning. The next week, Caleb brought in consultants to evaluate the research division. They asked strange questions, talked about restructuring for efficiency, and made cryptic notes. That's when I called my attorney, Victoria West. Something feels off, I told her. I've developed a compound that could be worth billions, but I'm getting signals that my position isn't secure. Let's talk about options, Victoria said. There are ways to protect yourself and your work. Victoria didn't mince words. Nexera owns your work, she said. Anything you develop as an employee belongs to them. That's standard. I know that, I replied, stirring my coffee. We were meeting at a quiet cafe several towns away from Stamford, away from any prying eyes. But the legal team has been dragging their feet on filing the patent for Neurovance XR. It's been sitting on their desks for months. Victoria looked thoughtful. That's either incompetence or strategy. Neither is good for you. What can I do? Tell me about your employment contract. Any specific clauses about intellectual property? I'd brought a copy, which Victoria reviewed carefully. She stopped at one section, her eyebrow raising slightly. This is interesting, she said. Your contract stipulates that inventions belong to Nexera if they're developed using company resources or during company time. Exactly, I said. It's all theirs. Not necessarily, Victoria replied, tapping the document. Have you done any work on this compound at home? Used your personal equipment? Worked on weekends or after hours when you weren't officially on the clock? I thought back. All the time. I have a home lab set up for theoretical work. I've spent countless weekends and nights refining the molecular structure before bringing it to the official lab. Victoria smiled. And I assume you've documented this? Lab notebooks? Timestamped computer files. Of course. I'm a scientist. Documentation is second nature. Then we might have something, she said, leaning forward. You could arguably claim that the initial conception and significant development occurred outside company time using personal resources. But the final testing was at Nexera. Yes, but the core intellectual breakthrough, the patent-worthy innovation, you could claim happened on your own time. I was skeptical. Would that hold up? It's not airtight, but it creates a gray area, enough to file a competing patent application as an individual inventor, Victoria explained. And sometimes a gray area is all you need to create leverage. The idea felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Wouldn't that be considered unethical? Is it ethical for them to delay filing a patent on your work while possibly planning to remove you? Companies protect themselves all the time. This is you doing the same. After another hour of discussion, we formulated a plan. Victoria would help me establish a personal intellectual property holding company. I would document all my independent work on the compound and file a patent application through my new entity. If Nexera kept me on and properly filed their patent, I would assign my rights to them. If not, well, I'd have insurance. For the next few weeks, I lived a double life. At Nexera, I was the same dedicated research director I'd always been. At home, I meticulously documented my independent contributions to Neurovance XR and prepared the patent filing. The day Victoria confirmed that our application had been submitted to the United States Patent and Trademark Office, I felt a strange mixture of relief and guilt. I told myself it was just protection, a safety net I would hopefully never need to use. 1 week later, I was called into that fateful meeting with Caleb Vance. I cleared out my office with methodical precision. Years of research, awards, and achievements reduced to 3 cardboard boxes. My team members came by one, shocked and upset. "This is ridiculous," said James, my senior researcher. "Without you, there is no Nexera." "You'll be fine," I assured him, though I wasn't certain of that. "The science is solid. Just keep doing the work." "What about Neurovance XR?" he asked in a hushed voice. "It's your baby." I carefully placed my framed doctoral diploma in a box. "I'm sure Caleb has plans for it." As I carried the last box to my car, I passed Caleb showing someone around my replacement, presumably. They were laughing. I nodded politely and continued walking. At home, I sat in my kitchen, staring at the boxes. 15 years gone. I allowed myself exactly 1 glass of wine and 30 minutes of self-pity before calling Victoria. "It happened," I said simply. "I'm sorry, Claudia," she replied. "What's the severance?" "Insulting. 12 weeks. Victoria made a disapproving sound. "Did you sign anything?" "Not yet. They want me to come in tomorrow to finalize." "Don't sign until I review it," she said firmly. "And don't mention the patent filing. The USPTO hasn't published it yet, so Nexera doesn't know." The next day, I met with Human Resources. The severance agreement included a comprehensive non-compete clause that would prevent me from working in neuropharmacology for 2 years. There was also language requiring me to assign any relevant intellectual property to Nexera. "I'd like to take this home and review it," I said pleasantly. The HR director frowned. "Mr. Vance was hoping to wrap this up today." "I'm sure he was," I replied, maintaining my smile. "But given my 15 years of service, I think a day to review is reasonable." I forwarded the document to Victoria, who called me within an hour. "This is even worse than I thought," she said. "They're trying to claim rights to anything you might develop in the future that's even tangentially related to your work at Nexera." "Can they do that?" "They can try. But we have options. Our patent filing gives us leverage." 3 days later, I returned to Nexera with a counteroffer prepared by Victoria. The HR director took it with visible surprise. "I'll have to show this to Mr. Vance," she said. "Of course," I replied. "I'm happy to wait." 20 minutes later, I was ushered into Caleb's office. He wasn't smiling. "This is highly irregular," he said, waving my counteroffer. "You're asking for significantly more severance and retention of certain intellectual property rights." "I believe it's fair compensation for my contributions," I said calmly. Caleb leaned forward. "You developed Neurovance while employed here. Any derivatives or improvements belong to Nexera." "That's a complex legal question," I replied. "My contract has specific language about work done during company time using company resources." His eyes narrowed. "What are you implying?" "Nothing. Just that I've kept meticulous records of my work, when and where it was performed." Caleb's jaw tightened. "We can fight this, you know. Our legal team would spend more on litigation than the additional severance I'm requesting," I finished for him. "And that's assuming you win." After a tense silence, Caleb pushed my counteroffer aside. "I'll need to discuss this with the board. In the meantime, we're proceeding with our plans for Neurovance XR. The announcement goes out next week." I kept my expression neutral. "That sounds exciting." As I left Nexera for what I thought might be the last time, I felt strangely calm. The game was in motion. In just a few days, they would announce Neurovance XR as their next blockbuster drug, and shortly after, they would discover who actually owned the patent. The press release went out on a Tuesday morning. Nexera Therapeutics announces breakthrough extended-release depression treatment. Neurovance XR expected to double company revenue by 2026. The stock jumped 12% that day. Financial analysts upgraded their recommendations. Business News shows featured glowing reports about Nexera's innovation pipeline and Caleb's visionary leadership. No one mentioned that the scientist behind the breakthrough had been let go. I watched it all from my home office, feeling oddly detached. Victoria called around noon. "Have you seen the announcement?" she asked. "Yes," I replied, very enthusiastic. "They're claiming they own the IP," Victoria said. "And the USPTO will be publishing patent applications on Thursday." "Including mine?" Yes. And since yours was filed first, it will be clear who has priority. What happens then? I asked, though we'd been over this scenario multiple times. One of two things, Victoria explained patiently. Either they realize the situation and approach us to negotiate, or they try to fight it and claim you stole company IP. Which do you think it will be? With someone like Caleb Vance? He'll fight. His ego won't allow anything else. She was right. The day after the USPTO published the patent applications revealing that Claudia Benson, not Nexera Therapeutics, had filed first for Neurovance XR, my phone exploded with calls. I ignored them all except Victoria's. It's happening, she said. Nexera's stock dropped 24% today. They've issued a statement claiming you misappropriated company intellectual property. As expected, I replied. There's more, Victoria continued. I've received calls from 3 different pharmaceutical companies wanting to discuss licensing Neurovance XR from you. That I hadn't expected so quickly. Already? Who? Verdant Pharmaceuticals, Meridian Healthcare, and Terrain Biotech. All major players. All offering terms that would make you very wealthy. I took a deep breath. Let's not rush into anything. What's happening with Nexera? Their board has called an emergency meeting. Word is that Caleb is in the hot seat. I felt a twinge of satisfaction, but pushed it aside. This wasn't about revenge. It was about fairness, about being valued properly for my work. Later that afternoon, I received a different kind of call from Howard Jameson, Nexera's founder and former CEO. Claudia, he said, his voice warm despite the circumstances. This is quite a situation. Howard, I replied, genuinely pleased to hear from him. I'm sorry it's come to this. Are you? There was no accusation in his tone, just curiosity. I considered the question. I'm sorry it was necessary. I gave everything to Nexera for 15 years. I just wanted my work to be respected and protected. Howard was quiet for a moment. The board has asked me to reach out unofficially to see if there's a path forward. There's always a path, I said. But it won't look like what Caleb offered me. Caleb may not be in the picture much longer, Howard said carefully. His position is precarious. I'm not surprised. What would it take, Claudia, to bring you and Neurovance XR back to Nexera? I'd thought about this moment, prepared for it. Board representation, a significant equity stake, and leadership of an autonomous research division with guaranteed funding for 5 years. Howard whistled softly. You're not asking for small things. Neurovance XR isn't a small drug, I replied. And I'm not the same person who was dismissed from a conference room last month. No, Howard agreed. You're certainly not. I'll take this back to the board, what's left of it after today. We'll be in touch. As I hung up, my phone signaled another call from James, my former senior researcher at Nexera. The office is in complete chaos, he said without preamble. Caleb's been escorted out. People are saying you own the patent to Neurovance XR. Is it true? It's complicated, I replied. Not to us, James said. The entire research team is cheering for you. Whatever happens next, we're with you. That meant more than any stock price drop or licensing offer. The following days unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. Nexera's board placed Caleb on administrative leave pending review, corporate speak for he's finished. The stock continued to fall as investors questioned the company's future without its next blockbuster drug. Financial news sites ran headlines like patent blunder costs Nexera billions and how one scientist outmaneuvered Big Pharma. I avoided the spotlight, declining interview requests and staying away from social media. This wasn't about public vindication. It was about establishing my worth. Meanwhile, the offers from other pharmaceutical companies grew more attractive. Verdant's CEO personally called to offer not just a licensing deal, but a position as their chief scientific officer, with complete autonomy over a new neuroscience division. We value innovation and the people behind it, he said. What happened at Nexera won't happen here. It was tempting, very tempting. Then came the official call from Nexera's board chair, Eleanor Fitzgerald. Dr. Benson, she began formally. The board would like to meet with you and your legal representation to discuss a resolution to our current situation. I appreciate that, I replied. When? Tomorrow, if possible. This matter requires urgent attention. Victoria and I prepared carefully, anticipating every possible scenario. When we arrived at Nexera's headquarters the next morning, the atmosphere was noticeably different. Gone was the bravado, the dismissive attitude. Now, there was deference, perhaps even a hint of fear. Eleanor led us into the boardroom, where 8 people waited, the remaining board members and Howard Jameson, who had returned as interim CEO. Dr. Benson, Eleanor began, we find ourselves in an unprecedented situation. The board believes there's been a significant error in judgment regarding your departure and the handling of the Neurovance XR patent. I nodded but remained silent. We would like to propose a resolution that recognizes your contributions and secures Neurovance XR's future with Nexera. Victoria and I listened as they outlined their offer: reinstatement as Executive Vice President of Research and Development, a seat on the board, equity compensation, and a substantial signing bonus. In return, I would transfer the patent rights to Nexera. When they finished, I glanced at Victoria, who gave a subtle nod. Your offer shows you now understand my value, I said. But it doesn't address the fundamental issues that led us here. I need guarantees of research autonomy and protection from future changes in leadership perspective. What followed was 3 hours of intense negotiation. By the end, we had crafted an agreement that satisfied all parties. I would return to Nexera with expanded authority, a significant equity stake, and ironclad protections for my research team. The patent for Neurovance XR would be transferred to Nexera, but with favorable royalty terms for me personally. As we prepared to leave, Howard pulled me aside. You outplayed us all, Claudia, he said with a mixture of admiration and regret. I'm sorry it came to this. I'm not, I replied honestly. Sometimes we need to be reminded of our worth. I returned to Nexera the following Monday. As I walked through the research division, my team greeted me with genuine smiles and visible relief. James had organized a small welcome-back gathering in the main lab. We knew you'd find a way back, he said, handing me a coffee mug with the Queen Returns printed on it. I laughed. Not a queen, just a scientist who learned to value herself. And taught a few corporate types a valuable lesson in the process, James added. As I settled back into my office, a much larger one now, with a view of the Long Island Sound, I reflected on the journey. I hadn't sought revenge, but I had found justice. And in the process, transformed not just my career, but potentially how researchers like me would be treated throughout the industry. Sometimes the most powerful response to disrespect isn't anger or vengeance. It's simply claiming your true value and letting the consequences unfold naturally. 1 year later, Nexera Therapeutics held a launch party for Neurovance XR, which had received FDA approval in record time. The grand ballroom of the Stamford Plaza Hotel was filled with executives, scientists, investors, and medical professionals, all celebrating what analysts were already calling the pharmaceutical success story of the decade. I stood on the small stage, having just delivered remarks about the scientific journey behind the drug. The applause was genuine and sustained. As I stepped away from the podium, Howard, now permanently reinstated as CEO, took my place. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, none of this would have been possible without Dr. Claudia Benson. Her scientific brilliance created Neurovance, and her, let's call it, strategic foresight ensured that Neurovance XR would transform millions of lives while keeping Nexera at the forefront of neurological treatment. The crowd laughed knowingly. The story of my patent maneuver had become something of a legend in pharmaceutical circles, a cautionary tale for executives and an inspiration for researchers. Howard continued, the board has unanimously voted to create the Benson Neuroscience Institute, a new division within Nexera dedicated to groundbreaking research, with complete scientific autonomy and guaranteed funding for the next decade. This announcement was met with even more enthusiastic applause. I hadn't known about this. It went beyond our negotiated agreement. As Howard beckoned me back to the stage, I felt a surge of emotion I hadn't expected. Howard stated, "The Institute will be housed in a new research facility right here in Stamford. Naturally, Claudia will be its director with the board's full backing." I noticed a familiar face close to the rear of the room as we lifted our glasses in a toast. Watching the events with a tense frown was Caleb Vance, who is now employed in a reduced function at a much smaller pharmaceutical business. He glanced away after a brief moment of eye contact. I was just grateful for the path that had led me here, not pleased by his demise. Sometimes the finest form of retaliation is creating something greater out of the ashes of what was lost rather than harming others. 6 months later, the Benson Neuroscience Institute opened for business. The structure itself was a wonder of contemporary architecture, filled with light and glass and intended to encourage creativity and teamwork. The most brilliant brains in neuropharmacology were keen to join what industry newspapers were describing as the most inventive research environment in biotech, and my team had grown from 12 researchers to 40. Eleanor Fitzgerald accompanied me on a tour of the facilities on the day of opening. As we strolled inside the main laboratory, she said, "Claudia, you've created something remarkable here. Something that will endure beyond our lifetimes." I corrected her, saying we made it. To make this possible, everything had to be lost. Eleanor gave a contemplative nod. The board has come to its senses. Value is found in the people who really perform the work, not only in quarterly reports and stock prices. I added, "I hope that lesson sticks." "It will," Eleanor said with a smile. "Especially now that you have enough Nexera stock to guarantee it." It was accurate. Negotiated upon my return, my stock position had increased significantly as Neurovance XR surpassed even the most optimistic forecasts. I was now among the biggest individual stockholders, and my impact went well beyond my work as a scientist. The pharmacological sector had noticed. Numerous significant corporations have updated their policies pertaining to researcher salary and recognition in the last 12 months. Even scientists had been added on the boards of 2. The message was unmistakable. Talent must be valued rather than merely used. I've heard that Caleb Vance has completely departed the industry. Caleb had attempted to portray himself at Nexera as the victim of circumstances, according to James, who had a wide network of contacts in the company. However, his reputation never bounced back. It had been the correct thing to go in a new path, but not in the way he had planned. Now, it was up to me to decide the course, one that was driven by creativity and research rather than ego and short-term thinking. In those gloomy days following my dismissal, I could not have predicted the possibilities that were ahead. I didn't miss the irony that, in the end, losing my job had given me more authority than I ever imagined. The foundation of a changed career and business was the patent that had initially appeared to be a last-ditch insurance policy. As I reflect on my path from discredited researcher to institute director and board member, I see that destruction isn't the best form of retaliation. But in creating something so indisputable that those who threw you out had to own up to their error.